Hello everyone, this is Julia from Craft Room Adventures. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have another fall-themed card to share with you using the adorable Fairy Garden and Fall Buddies stamp sets from Hello Bluebird. First I started by coloring all of my images using Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers and Arteza brush pens. I stamped all of my images using Versafine Onyx black ink onto Strathmore Bristol smooth cardstock, and as you can see, there are a lot more images here than will end up on my card. I did 2 cards using the fairy images, so all of them are in this frame, but I'm only using one of the fairies and the fall themed images for this one. I'm using the Zig marker in 71 for the skin tone and number 303 for the wings of the fairies. I'm also adding a little bit of shimmer pen on the wings to add some sparkle, but unfortunately you can't really tell in the video, but in real life it's really pretty shine. For the hair of this fairy, I'm using 137, sorry. Now I'm just adding a second layer of color on the hair of my fairy to add a little bit more shading. And then blending that out with my water brush. I'm coloring in her dress in the color 124 Apricot. And now I'm just adding a second layer of color on my fairy to deepen up the color on her dress. Now I'm coloring in the pumpkin with orange, and I'm using crocodile green for the stems. I'm just adding a second layer of color to add a little bit more shade on all of my pumpkins. And now I'm going in with a crocodile green for the stems. For the mushrooms, I'm using 137 and 175 Arteza markers. I'm coloring them all in the same color because I wanted them to match. I didn't know how many I would need, so I just colored all of them just in case, so that I wouldn't have to go back and recolor if I did decide I wanted to add all of them. So this is the Pale Peach 175 marker from Arteza, and I'm just using this one on the bottom parts of the mushrooms. Now for my little squirrel, I'm using the 60 marker from Zig. Unfortunately, my camera cut out there, but I just blended out the marker number 60. And on my mouse, I use the warm gray marker. Here I'm just adding a little bit more of the number 60 brown to make the shading a little bit more intense. And I'm doing the same thing on my mouse. Now I'm using some tomato red for the scarf. And that finishes up the coloring. I die cut 2 grassy hills using the Grassy Knoll die by Hello Bluebird as well. And I'm ink blending this with bundled sage distress ink. Now I'm just blending the color back and forth until I'm happy with the blend. I'm using Squeezed Lemonade, Abandoned Coral, and Shabby Shutters for the background. I die cut the panel out of Bristol Smooth cardstock using the basic rectangles die by Mama Elephant. I used the largest size to create the stitching edge. And now I'm just blending the colors back and forth. Now I'm also adding the green. I'm starting to blend, and then I realized that this is way too bright for what I wanted to use. So to salvage the background, I'm using Distress Oxides because of the chalky finish they lay on top, and I am trying to tone down the color with Tattered Rose and Antique Linen Distress Oxide. I was super surprised how well that actually worked, and it turned it into this nice creamy background. Here I'm using Squeezed Lemonade, but that was still way too bright. So Antique Linen really, the beige color really toned it down quite a bit. And this background I liked a lot more. I'm just blending those back and forth, the Antique Linen and the Tattered Rose, until I'm happy with it. And I also decided that I didn't need the bottom because I was going to add my grassy hills. I'm stamping my sentiment, the Autumn Blessings. I also decided that I needed one more image, and I decided to use the little bumblebee from the Fly a Kite stamp set. And I wanted to add this little bee line. I used that from the Elephant Friends stamp set. And I'm just putting all of those on my panel in my stamp platform because I wanted to heat emboss those in gold. I'm using my anti-static powder tool to prep the background so that the no stray embossing powder will stick. Now I'm using Versamark ink to ink up my stamps. And now I'm using the Wow embossing powder in rich pale gold, superfine, I think. I'm just using a paintbrush that I always use for my heat embossing to clear off any stray powder. My heat tool is already heating up next to me so that it's nice and hot before I take it to my paper. And now I'm just heat setting the embossing with my heat tool. My panel did warp a bit. There was still like one little fleck of embossing powder that stuck out a bit, but I thought I could melt it more, but it didn't work. So it's still a little bit visible, but oh well. Now I'm adhering my background to an A2 sized card base. I'm adding quite a bit of adhesive because the panel is a little bit warped. So I'm using that to press it down and make it flat again. I'm also using an acrylic block to give it some even pressure, but it turned out fine. Now I'm adding my grassy hills. I'm adding some adhesive runner to the back of the hill that's going to be in the back. And I also added some foam tape on the back of the other hill to adhere to the front. Make sure I line it up with the bottom of the card. Now I'm adding my images. I used the fairy, I adhered the fairy with some foam tape. Also my little bee in front of the bee line. And then I'm just placing the rest of the images on the grassy hills. I'm tucking the mushrooms in behind the grass. And those I will keep in the front, also adding a little pumpkin. Then I thought I liked it, but it was still a bit empty. So I removed my fairy and the bumblebee. I covered up the exposed adhesive and I cut a mask of the sentiment. I put a little paper over top of my hill and I decided to splatter everything with Lawn Fawn liquid stardust to add a bit more interest to the panel and quite a bit of shine. So I'm just squeezing out a drop of it onto my mat, spraying it with some water to make it spreadable, so that I could use a paintbrush to create splatters on my background. I like that a lot more. It's not that visible in the pictures, but in person it's really, really pretty. Now I'm just removing the backers of the foam tape again, removing the mask I cut for my sentiment, and adhering the images back into place. And that finishes up my card for today. I really hope you like this one. Thank you so much for watching. I would very much appreciate it if you would consider subscribing to my channel for more videos. Have a wonderful day. Bye guys!